He kicked down my workshop door like he owned the place. Dressed in a knockoff HOA uniform, eyes full of arrogance, fists ready to destroy the files that exposed their $500,000 scam. Then he grabbed me, slammed me into the bench so hard the wall shook. My wife's photo shattered at my feet. But what he didn't see was the shadow moving behind him. My daughter, a judo prodigy, a military cadet. And in that moment, one grunt with a fake badge versus a fighter trained to dismantle threats. Go ahead, guess who hit the floor? Where are you watching this Karen story from? If it hits hard, tap like and subscribe. We've got more justice on the way. I used to believe peace had a sound. At Clearwater Ridge, it came in the soft knock of wind against pine shutters, the creak of my old wooden porch swing, the distant sound of children chasing shadows between oak trees. For a retired mechanical engineer like me, Richard Miles, this town was more than just a place. It was the final chapter I thought I'd write. I built this house with my late wife, Claire, one beam at a time. I built my workshop with my bare hands. And until recently, I thought I'd be buried beneath that very soil, unbothered by the world beyond the picket fences. The HOA had once been harmless. A few meetings a year, some lawn reminders, the occasional bake sale flyer slipped under the door. I knew every face, every laugh. We were more neighbors than residents. But something shifted when Karen Whitlow took over the HOA presidency. It wasn't just the rules that changed. It was the tone. Fines appeared for things that were once overlooked, a garden tool left out, a curtain color deemed unsuitable. The newsletters turned colder, sterile, like they were printed by machines, not people. And worst of all, the fees. They doubled, then tripled, all with vague promises of infrastructure enhancements and community security expansions. Still, I kept to myself. That is, until the numbers stopped making sense. Until I realized the same tranquility I cherished was being drained piece by piece through bank accounts and fear. That's when I did what Claire always told me to do when something didn't feel right. I followed the paper trail, and what I found was the beginning of a storm no one was ready for. She stepped off the porch like she never left it. Eliza, my daughter, had always carried herself like a quiet storm, disciplined, composed, dangerous only when necessary. She had returned from Westlake Officer Academy for a 2-week break, and the moment her boots hit our old floorboards, I felt something solid return to this house. Claire's steadiness, her fire. It lived on in that girl. But there was no time for slow homecomings. Eliza stood frozen, one hand still on the doorknob, staring at the bright pink violation notice taped to our kitchen window. It clashed against the glass like a wound. Unapproved mailbox design, it read. $150 fine. Due immediately. She turned to me, brow furrowed. Is this a joke? I shook my head. It's Karen. She's not running a homeowners association anymore. She's building a fiefdom. Just yesterday I saw her pacing the sidewalk like a hawk in high heels. Clipboard in one hand, smartphone in the other. Her voice pierced the air like broken glass as she barked at a single mother for painting her shutters blue. This isn't a daycare, it's a neighborhood, she snapped. Control your chaos. Karen Whitlow was more than cruel. She was calculated. I'd watched her plant fear like seeds. Divide neighbors. Weaponize bylaws. Smother trust with bureaucracy. And now, with Eliza home, I saw the spark in her eyes as she read the fees I'd been documenting. Saw the outrage bloom. She closed the folder I'd been building, looked me dead in the eye. If she's hiding something, we're going to find it. I nodded. The air felt heavier now. Something had begun to rot in Clearwater Ridge, and this time, I wasn't keeping quiet. If you've ever had to stand up to someone like Karen, drop 9 in the comments. You're not alone. The numbers didn't add up, and they weren't supposed to. For 3 nights straight, I sat in my workshop, cross-referencing the HOA's quarterly financial summaries with their so-called project updates. The deeper I dug, the louder the alarm bells screamed. I found $32,000 allocated to pool maintenance for a pool that had been drained for over a year. $18,500 marked for community beautification. But no new flowers, no new benches, Nothing but the same dry hedges and a dead oak tree that Karen claimed was a historical symbol of resilience. Bull. Each document I printed felt heavier than the last. A spreadsheet here, a false invoice there. Shell companies with vague names like Oakcrest Solutions and Whitlow Partners LLC. My fingers clenched the paper so tightly it nearly tore. Eliza leaned over my shoulder. "This is theft, systematic, hidden in plain sight." I nodded. "She's laundering HOA dues through ghost vendors. She's using our neighborhood as her personal ATM." The worst part? Karen didn't even try to hide her contempt anymore. That afternoon, she parked her Mercedes, yes, a brand new one, diagonally across 2 visitor spots near the clubhouse. She marched across the lawn in heels sharp enough to pierce steel, shouting at a veteran on a mobility scooter for not having HOA-approved reflective tape on his wheels. "This isn't a charity zone," she barked. "Conform, or reconsider your residency." I gritted my teeth so hard I thought I'd crack a molar. When I asked the board for original invoices during the last open meeting, Karen didn't flinch. "Richard, if you're confused by basic math, perhaps it's time you sit down and let the adults run things." That was it. She wasn't just corrupt. She was cruel, smug, and dangerous. And now she was mocking the very people she was supposed to serve. I looked at Eliza and said the words I'd been holding back for weeks. "We're not just uncovering fraud. We're going to bury her in it." The storm rolled in before the clouds did. I felt it in my chest before I heard it in the sky, pressure tightening like a warning. Eliza and I had been up all night piecing together the final links, fake contractor names, payment loops between shell companies, and email headers Karen thought she'd deleted. She was siphoning community funds into a private development trust registered 2 counties away. It had her name stamped all over it. And then, a knock. No, not a knock. A slam. The back door to my workshop burst open with such force that my wrench rack trembled. I spun around, heart spiking. Standing in the threshold, soaked from the sudden downpour, was James Weber, Karen's bulldog in human form. Black polo shirt, combat boots. HOA compliance officer stitched across his chest like he was some kind of federal agent. "Mr. Miles," he said, voice hollow. "This is an emergency inspection." I stood my ground. "You're trespassing." He held up a laminated paper like it meant something. "Violation code 18B, suspicion of unauthorized commercial activity on HOA-regulated land." I stared him down. That's a fake law on a fake document from a fake officer. Weber took a step in, then another. "I'm authorized to confiscate any relevant material." I moved fast, too fast for a man my age, planted myself between him and the desk where the hard drive sat. "Touch anything in here, and I'll see you in court for burglary, not to mention impersonating an authority figure." His eyes narrowed. "We know about your files, Miles. Karen wants them gone." My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. "Then tell Karen she should have burned the whole house down instead of sending a mutt through the back door." That's when he shoved me. It wasn't a warning shove. It was a deliberate, bone-rattling hit that sent me sprawling into the side table. Tools crashed. A photo of Claire and Eliza hit the floor and shattered. The pain in my ribs screamed louder than my voice. "You think you're smarter than us?" Weber sneered. "You're just an old man with a keyboard and a hero complex." He turned toward the desk, reaching for the laptop. Then, from the far side of the room, I heard her boots. Eliza. No yelling, no panic. Just a sudden, heavy silence. Weber froze mid-step as she appeared in the doorway, rain still slicking her jacket, eyes locked on him like crosshairs. "Step away from my father," she said, calm as ice. He laughed, but it cracked at the edges. "This is HOA business, little girl. Stay out of it." Eliza took one step in, controlled, measured, deadly. "You laid hands on my father," she said flatly, "which means I get to lay you on the floor." And I knew in that moment, Weber had no idea the storm he'd just walked into. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside my workshop. Weber had just turned toward my desk, toward the hard drives, when the rain-wet floor behind him creaked ever so slightly. Not enough for the average man to notice. But Eliza wasn't average. She stepped out from the shadows of the side entrance. No shout, no grand entrance. Just presence. Focused, cold, unwavering. In her right hand, she held something small and silver. She let it fall. Clink. Her officer cadet badge landed face up on the concrete between them. Weber turned slowly, like his instincts already knew he'd made a mistake. "Who the hell are you?" he barked. Eliza stared at him, jaw locked, eyes like steel behind stormlight. "The person who's going to put you on a stretcher if you take one more step." He laughed. But the sound was off, forced, almost shaky. "This is HOA business, sweetheart. Step aside." Eliza didn't move, not an inch. "You laid hands on my father," she said. "Which means you just waived your right to walk out of here." Weber's ego didn't let him back down. Karen had filled his head with too many delusions: power, immunity, untouchability. He lunged forward, drawing a compact stun baton from his belt like he thought he was in a movie. He wasn't. Eliza sidestepped cleanly, letting his momentum carry him forward. Her left hand snaked under his arm, her right grabbed his wrist. With a fluid pivot and fierce control, she hurled him over her shoulder in a perfect seoinage. He hit the ground so hard, the floor trembled. Before he could react, Eliza dropped to one knee, pressed her forearm against the back of his neck, and used her weight to trap his arm across his chest. "That's called leverage," she said coldly. "You don't need to fight gravity. You just need to respect it." Weber flailed once, twice, then went still. "You assaulted a civilian, violated private property, and threatened a decorated officer's family," she continued. "You're not walking away from that." From the floor, Weber grunted. "Karen will—" Eliza cut him off. "Karen sent you here to cover up a felony, and now your face is on 4 cameras and a live stream backup. Congratulations." I watched from the corner, stunned, a hand on my bruised ribs. Part of me wanted to shout, to rush in, but I didn't. Because my daughter just dismantled a grown man, an armed intruder, with precision and restraint, and she didn't even raise her voice. Weber stopped struggling, but not because he accepted defeat. He stopped because Eliza didn't give him the option to fight back. Her grip was precise, calculated, and cold. Every movement screamed control, not chaos. She wasn't improvising. She wasn't angry. She was executing muscle memory, the kind trained under pressure, refined in combat simulations, sharpened by discipline. "You think this is over?" Weber hissed, his cheek pressed against concrete. "Karen's got the board, the sheriff, the lawyers. You don't scare her." Eliza didn't blink. "I'm not here to scare her," she said, tightening her arm slightly. "I'm here to end her delusions." He winced, but not from pain, from reality sinking in. Outside, sirens wailed, closer now. I recognized the pattern. Not HOA security, county law enforcement. Real badges, real consequences. Eliza glanced up at the camera, blinking red in the corner of my workshop, and said aloud, "Recording confirmed. Suspect entered without a warrant, made physical threats, used force, neutralized with minimal damage." I swear she could have been reading a field report, her voice calm, her facts weaponized. I staggered upright, leaning on the workbench, ribs throbbing, heart pounding. "He said Karen sent him," I told her. "She's panicking." Eliza nodded. "She should be." Moments later, the front door flew open. 2 deputies stepped in, real ones this time. And right behind them, Karen. She was drenched but defiant, wrapped in a crimson trench coat like it made her bulletproof. Her mascara was smudged, her hair clinging to her face, but her sneer? Still perfectly intact. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, voice like sugar laced with venom. "Mr. Weber was investigating a reported code violation. These two," she motioned toward us, "interfered." Eliza didn't move. She didn't need to. One of the deputies turned to her. "Ma'am, did you restrain this man?" "Yes," she said plainly. "Citizen's arrest, based on unlawful entry and assault. Evidence has been secured." The deputy nodded. "Understood." Karen's jaw locked. She tried to speak, but for once her words fell flat. Because the moment belonged to someone stronger, smarter, and far less afraid. Eliza. And Clearwater Ridge would never forget it. The HOA scheduled an emergency town review meeting for the following evening, but everyone knew what it really was. Damage control. Karen tried to play it like business as usual. Cleaned up. Hair lacquered back into its helmet shape. A white blouse sharp enough to slice ego, and a clipboard stacked with minutes and adjusted projections. She strutted into the community hall like she still owned it. But something had changed. People didn't part for her like before. They didn't nod or smile. They stared. Silent. Waiting. And I was ready. I stood near the front, Eliza beside me, our laptop hooked into the projector. The evidence was locked, time-stamped, cloud-backed, and bulletproof. Karen tapped the mic once. Sharp, deliberate. We understand there was a regrettable incident yesterday involving Mr. Weber and the Miles family. Let me be clear, he acted independently, and we are investigating the matter internally. I stepped forward. You don't get to frame this anymore, Karen. She blinked, tightened her grip on the podium. Excuse me? I didn't wait. I clicked the remote. The projector lit up. First slide. Weber's forged inspection order. Second, screenshots of financial transfers to Oakcrest Solutions, a company with no employees, no address. Just a P.O. box tied to a business license signed by Karen Whitlow. Gasps echoed. A few people stood. This is slander, Karen hissed, but her voice cracked. I raised mine. This is theft, and I have receipts. Over $527,000 funneled through shell corporations tied to your name. Contracts signed without board approval. HOA dues laundered into your private trust. And here's the worst part. 3 homes foreclosed under your manipulated fee hikes were quietly bought. By a company you own. Dead silence. You used fear. You weaponized rules. You bullied widows and veterans while buying their homes out from under them. Karen's composure shattered. They were failing to pay their dues. I was protecting the neighborhood's value. Eliza stepped forward. You were draining it, and when you couldn't scare people silent, you sent a thug to break into our home. Then came the final blow, a video file. On screen, Weber, restrained, voice shaking. Karen said to make it disappear. The files, the guy. She said no one could trace it back. Karen lunged forward to yank the power cable. Too late. The room erupted. Neighbors shouted. Some cried. A man near the back whispered, She fined me $600 for planting a non-native flower. Deputies moved in quietly. One officer walked up, calm but firm. Ms. Whitlow, you're under investigation for fraud, harassment, and conspiracy. She didn't protest. She didn't scream. She just stared at us, not with fear, but hatred, the kind that knows it lost. I exhaled. This war wasn't over, but the lies were. And now, we had the mic. Karen Whitlow didn't show up in handcuffs the next day. She showed up in pearls and a white blazer, as if she still ruled the room. She walked into the special election meeting like the throne had only been briefly vacated, not ripped from under her feet. But she wasn't met with applause this time. Not even indifference. She was met with pure, blistering silence. The kind that speaks louder than any gavel. The kind that says, We've seen you. We're done. The community center was packed, shoulder to shoulder with homeowners, reporters, and investigators. The screen behind me was still glowing faint blue, ready to present the new vote. I glanced at Eliza. Calm. Focused. Her fingers rested lightly on the edge of the table like a tactician studying a battlefield. Karen took her seat near the front, flanked by the only 2 board members who hadn't already resigned. Her mouth twisted into a thin smile, but her eyes were scanning, counting votes, calculating allies. She still thought she had leverage. She didn't. I stood and addressed the room. My voice was firm, not loud, not angry, just undeniably certain. This vote isn't about revenge. It's about reclamation. About rebuilding trust where someone like Karen set fire to it. A murmur of agreement moved through the crowd. For years, this HOA was used as a weapon, fines as threats, meetings as traps, and our dues as fuel for one woman's greed. Karen scoffed, just loud enough. This is a smear campaign by a bitter retiree and his overtrained daughter. Eliza stood before I could say a word. Overtrained. Try focused. Try informed. Try disciplined enough to stop the man you sent to destroy evidence. The silence turned razor sharp. Karen rolled her eyes, but even her posture was cracking. You think removing me will solve your problems? She spat. I kept this community running. I walked forward, closing the distance between us. No, you ran it into the ground. And when people couldn't pay, you bought their homes out from under them. That's not leadership. That's predation. I turned to the crowd. Tonight, we vote to dismantle the rot. We create a temporary oversight committee. Full transparency. No spending without majority approval. And every document made public. Applause erupted. Not polite, but thunderous, relieved, righteous. The ballots were passed out. Karen tried once more. Last gasps of power from a woman drowning. You're letting emotion blind you. You need someone strong to lead, someone not afraid to make hard calls. Eliza responded without flinching. There's a difference between hard calls and cruel ones. You made the latter, over and over. Minutes later, the results came in. 89% voted to remove Karen Whitlow and dissolve the current HOA board. A cheer shook the walls. Several people openly cried. Karen stood, motionless. Her fingers clenched the back of her chair. Her pearls gleamed like a noose. You'll regret this, she said, voice nearly a whisper. Only thing I regret, I said, is not doing it sooner. Deputies approached. She wasn't under arrest, yet, but she was under state-level investigation. One of them gently gestured toward the exit. And that's when the final humiliation hit. The projector flicked to the next slide. Eliza's idea. A photo of Karen holding scissors beside a Welcome to Clearwater Ridge sign. Underneath it, bold red letters. This was your empire, now it's ours. Karen didn't speak again. She walked out, alone, disgraced, and defeated. And Clearwater Ridge began to breathe again. The next morning, Clearwater Ridge felt different. It wasn't louder. It wasn't busier. But something intangible had shifted. The silence had softened. For the first time in years, people stood outside and talked without whispering. They walked their dogs without glancing over their shoulders. The air wasn't heavy anymore. It felt clean, like the first breath after a storm that nearly leveled you. Karen was gone. Her resignation was official. Her assets had been frozen pending investigation. Weber was already facing charges, and every shell company she'd used to bleed the community dry was being dissected by forensic accountants. But justice, real justice, was never just about consequences. It was about repair. We gathered in the community center that Sunday. No podiums, no microphones, just folding chairs, homemade lemonade, and people. Neighbors. Not hostages anymore. I stood beside Eliza as they read out the names of the newly formed oversight committee. My name was last, but not least. Interim treasurer. Again. A job I never wanted. A duty I couldn't ignore. As they clapped, I looked at Eliza. My daughter, my protector, my late wife's mirror in so many impossible ways. She'd made a decision. I'm declining officer track, she said quietly to me. I want to stay local, teach self-defense, work with kids, seniors, women, anyone who's ever been made to feel powerless. I nodded. Not surprised, just proud in a way words couldn't hold. You're not leaving the battlefield, I told her. You're just choosing a better one. The committee's first act was symbolic, but it mattered. They approved the creation of the Claire Miles Fund, named after my late wife. A fund dedicated to helping residents facing financial hardship. It wouldn't be run by officials. It would be fueled by neighbors, transparent, accountable, and deeply personal. I stood in front of the first group of volunteers, people who had once been silenced, fined, mocked, and I told them the truth. What was stolen from us wasn't just money. It was dignity, belonging, The right to feel safe in our own homes. We are not rebuilding fences. We are rebuilding faith. They nodded. Some wept. Some stood in silence, eyes closed, as if relearning how to breathe freely again. Over the following weeks, we held open forums, not to argue, but to listen. We repaired fences with our own hands. We rewrote the bylaws with the help of legal counsel. And for the first time, we held votes where everyone's voice actually counted. No threats, no fines, no fake inspections, just community. One afternoon, while organizing old files in the workshop, I found Claire's journal, tucked behind a crate of spare bolts. Her handwriting filled the margins with quiet observations, notes about neighbors, concerns she never voiced aloud, and this circled in ink. The most dangerous corruption isn't loud. It's quiet. It wears civility like armor. If you want to fight it, you need to be louder than silence. I closed the book and let the words settle. Outside, Eliza was teaching a group of seniors how to counter a wrist grab. Their laughter echoed across the street. And for once, I didn't flinch at the sound. I hung Claire's photo, repaired, reframed, on the wall of the newly renamed Miles Community Workshop. Below it, a plaque. In memory of those who built with love, defended with truth, and rebuilt with grace. We didn't get back everything we lost, but we took back who we were. And that was more than enough. In the end, this wasn't just a fight against fraud, or a corrupt HOA, or even one dangerous woman named Karen. It was a fight for something much deeper. The right to live in peace. The right to protect your home. The right to say enough when someone, no matter how powerful, how entitled, or how rehearsed, tries to silence you with fear, paperwork, or a fake badge. Karen built an empire on intimidation. But it only took one family, one daughter with steel in her spine and fire in her heart, to turn that empire to dust. And here's the truth. You don't need to be a martial arts expert, a war hero, or a financial auditor to stand up for what's right. You just need to recognize the moment when silence becomes complicity and decide that you're not going to stay quiet anymore. That moment could be a rigged meeting, an unfair fine, or someone barging into your life, your home, your workshop, with the arrogance to believe they can do whatever they want and get away with it. But no one gets away forever, because justice isn't a person. It's a force. And once it's set in motion, through truth, through courage, through unity, it doesn't stop. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever seen power abused and wondered whether it's worth speaking up, the answer is yes. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is hit record, open your mouth, and say, "No, not here, not today. Now it's your turn." If you've ever faced a Karen in your life, or saw someone else stand up against unfairness, type "stand" in the comments. Let's flood the feed with strength. Let's remind the world, we don't back down. And if you want more real stories of power reclaimed, injustice exposed, and communities rising, hit that like button, subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell, because we've got more Karen stories coming. And trust me, they only get crazier from here. Until next time, stay sharp, stay strong, and never ever let the silence win.